G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder. Due to the previous response to the State of Top Tier video, I'm thinking that we are going to have another conversation about some extra things that perhaps could be adjusted or perhaps could be addressed throughout the use of Top Tier. Now, for most people, Top Tier also refers to tanks, and I completely missed discussing Tank RB. Now, I don't really play a lot of top tier tanks, but I do play a fair bit of 8.0, 7.7, 8.3-ish, in that sort of region, tier 5-ish and early tier 6. And for me, I do see what could be improved. A lot of people have told me that top tier or the matchmaking system or some sort of aspect of top tier is it's completely worthless and should be thrown in the bin and completely restarted. Personally, I follow a principle of if it's more than 50% fucked, then throw it away. But for me, I don't see top tier as 50% fucked. I see it as maybe 20 or 30% fucked. Because there are certain aspects of top tier that are really, really good, other aspects of top tier which definitely need some improvement. So, some of the things that we sort of discussed in the previous video are, of course, compression. Battle rating compression is a pretty big thing, and a couple of people asked me to list a few things, so I'm going to list some thoughts as the video goes on about battle rating compression and exact battle ratings for said jets. Another thing was, of course, map size and player count. In that video, I said 15 versus 15 for a map, say, like Korea, which you're seeing in the background, is too small. It should be 7v7 or 10v10, no more than that, maybe 8v8. But I definitely do think that the map sizes for the planes are too small. Another thing, of course, is a few things that I haven't mentioned. Now, we're going to get onto them in this particular video, as well as talking about tanks. Now, the first thing that really comes to mind for me is the stock grind. A lot of planes at this battle rating rely on their guns in the stock phase before jumping onto missiles. The MiG-21s are a perfect example of this. Them, by themselves, with the guns, are nothing short of atrocious. The guns are great, but they are only good in low-speed dogfights. And you find this in real life as well, where I think only one person, and I think that was in an F4 Phantom, was able to get a supersonic gun kill. This doesn't happen in real life, and whilst War Thunder's mouse aim and general slightly more arcadey feel to it allows for you to sort of perfect a lot of things, such as CAS, for example, as well as aiming with guns. It shouldn't be relied upon as a stock plane. I think that's kind of atrocious, to be honest. What I would suggest, and what I would highly recommend, is that every single plane from this particular tier onwards starts with missiles. And it doesn't have to be a good set of missiles. Maybe the only exceptions here could be, say, the planes that only have one set of missiles. For example, the FGR-2. Perhaps in the F4E, you could start off with AIM-9Bs or AIM-9Es. Perhaps you could start off in the F4C with AIM-9Bs. Perhaps you could start in the MiG-21 with R3s. So, whilst you don't have the best missiles, whilst you're not completely batshit overpowered, you at least have something to combat your opponents with on the same level as they do. Because it is ridiculously unfair to me that someone has to go in with guns in a MiG-21 where they have nothing else. To me, that just isn't really a good way to operate. I think it should be done better, and I think it doesn't really make too much of a difference if Gaijin makes these, I don't know, a tier 1, the best missiles, a tier 2 modification. It doesn't really lose them that much money. I don't think many people are going to pay for basic missiles only. They would go straight to the big ones, and they would be spending a bit more money than, I don't know, $10 for these R3s. This would allow planes that aren't really that competent without their missiles to shine a bit more. Stock, where it sucks and where it hurts. Now, I'm lucky. I'm a content creator. I don't have to go through a stock grind if I don't want to. I'm not the majority of the player base, though. And for me, I think if the majority of the player base is going through something as bullshit, let's face it, as this, I think it should be adjusted to make up for that. So, stock missiles. Let me know what you think about these as well, because this is an ongoing discussion, and I would like to put some of these to Gaijin themselves, just to make this a little bit more relevant. So, one of the other things that was brought up during my previous video was from the Scottish Koala. He mentioned 2 airfields. Now, whilst I agree that 2 airfields would be fantastic, I don't think it's the be-all end-all. Personally, I love every single AirRB map that has more than 1 runway. I think that is a fantastic idea. I think it combats airfield strafing. I think it combats the ridiculous bomber spam that can absolutely ruin games, especially battle rating 4.3 with the 264. I think it also gives bombers some more stuff to bomb. So if they survive long enough, or for example, if you're in a Phantom and someone has gone to 15k and you just don't want to chase them, you can chuck some bombs and rockets on. You can extend some time frames for your Operation Space Race or, Battlefield Engineer type tasks. I think that having that option is really, really nice. And I think having it added to all maps should be mandatory. I think it should be added to all maps, and I really, really love that idea. I don't think, however, it should replace the lack of 15 versus 15. Because for me, the large player count of these maps is just due to the overloading, the increased density of players in a certain area. For me, a map like Spain, even though I don't really like the map on a personal basis, I think it is a good size. I think more maps like that would be good, and whilst I don't really want to see the English Channel map, perhaps a cut down version of something around that, maybe a larger Normandy, or the Afghanistan map is a really good size. I think it is worth using that as a model to make the rest of the maps. There is an EC map for Vietnam, and I don't know why it hasn't been used. You could very easily cut out a 128 by 128 block and just stick 4 airfields on it, some ground targets in the middle, or a convoy, or something simple, and just call it an AirRB map. And I really don't think the player base would care. In fact, I think the player base would love you for it. So, with that out of the way, and I'd like to thank Koala for his input. I think Koala has some really, really strong ideas. And as a YouTuber himself, you should definitely watch the ideas that he has, especially regarding things like the grind, which I feel like I need to add my own 2 cents into as well. You might see a video of that soon. The main thing I really wanted to talk about for top tier was the battle ratings. And the battle ratings are, in my opinion, quite compressed. Although, it's not really the end of the world. It doesn't require a whole lot of change. Reducing the spread to 0.7, in my opinion, doesn't really cut it. What I would like to see is an increase to 11.0. And I did specify some battle ratings, but for me, I think going into a bit more detail and a little bit more depth regarding the subject is, I'd say, required. So, for me, I would put the F4E, the F4EJ, and maybe the SMT and the MF at 11.0. Personally, I think they are easily the strongest vehicles in the game, and they don't have any relevant competition that stands up to them as far as any other vehicles. The closest one that comes to it, in my opinion, is the FGR2, which you are probably seeing on screen right now. Personally, I don't like the FGR2 as much because I'm sort of the opinion that weapon systems are a little bit more important than performance in this case. I understand those of you that don't really agree with me, and I can somewhat understand that. I think perhaps this thing could go to 11.0 as well, but I wouldn't be against it at 10.7. Speaking of 10.7, the MiG-21F and the F4C should both go at 10.7. I think that would be a fine battle rating for them, and that would push them away from the rather unfortunate 9.3s. I think that would be good and healthy for the battle rating. It would also allow them to fight things that are quite strong and have better weapon systems than them. For example, the G91YS, which suffers greatly, by the way. For those of you who aren't aware, I'm sure everyone is, because it's not really a fair state of affairs. So, below that, we would have the 10.3s. Now, I'm kind of torn between the 10.3 or 10.7 for the MiG-19s. I'm kind of leaning towards 10.7, but I definitely think 10.3 wouldn't be awful either. I'm, again, kind of indifferent. I'm fine with it going into 10.7. I'm fine with it going to 10.3. I don't really mind. Let me know in the comments section, and perhaps we could just go with the official option as a majority rules kind of thing. So, 10.3 or 10.7 MiG-19s. I think that's fair. At 10.3, I would put the J-35D, since it isn't really able to hold energy as much as you would hope, I suppose. 10.3 for me is fine. It doesn't really destroy all the 9.3s. In fact, it actually fares quite well with them in the battle rating and against them. It doesn't turn as well, but it definitely does have a couple of little weird aces that it can pull out of its sleeve. At 10.3, I would also put the T2, because I don't believe the T2 is quite as good as the MiG-19s, especially with the energy retention changes. Obviously, when it was introduced, it was without a doubt the best jet, but since the MiG-19 got its buff, I think it is fair to put it at, a battle rating either with or above it. Again, 10.3 I think is fine, and I believe that that's pretty fair. As for the J7, I think I would like to see the J7 at the same battle rating as the MiG-21F at 10.7. I did completely forget about that. And of course, all of the sort of copy-paste versions should all be at the same battle rating as each other. I'm looking at U2 F100s. Even though they have the AIM-9Bs, I do believe the F100D and the F100As for the French and the Chinese tech tree should both be at 10.0. They should be at 10.0 with the current flight model of the Lightning F6, the Hunter F6, and of course, I think that that is a fair and reasonable battle rating for both of them. For me, although I put the F100 above the Hunter F6, the Hunter F6 undoubtedly has very formidable weapon systems that in a down tier definitely destroy those lower tier planes. I would also put the G91YS at 9.7, keeping it where it is. I think it's fine, although I'm indifferent to it at 9.3. That being said, it does tend to do very well against 8.3s, so maybe 9.7 isn't a bad idea after all. At 9.7, I would also put the J32B, just because that thing is an absolute beast. I would also put the Sabre Dogs, that is the F-86Ks, and I would also probably put the CL-13B and the Shenyang F5. It sits there with the Hunter the FGA-9, that's the one. And I think that that is fair and reasonable. I don't believe that it is too high or too low there. The J32 is really strong, and the Shenyang F5 is also extremely strong. The Sabre Dogs, I haven't played a whole lot of them, but I definitely think that they are quite good. They are very, very enjoyable as well. So if you haven't played them, I would suggest playing them. Now, the CL-13B, personally, I believe that that jet is one of, if not the best 9.3, disregarding the Lanson. So I would probably put that one as well at 9.7. Just because it's very strong. And it's also very fun. But that's beside the point. At 9.3, I would basically put all of the 9.0s that I haven't discussed earlier. The Super Mystère, the MiG-17, the F2 Sabre. I would probably put all of those at that battle rating. The Hunter F1 as well. I think that's fair, I think that's reasonable, and I think that that is good and healthy as well. At 9.0, I would put the MiG-15 BIS, the Swift F7, the G91R3, the G91R1, and the G91R4. The G91s for me are ridiculously strong, but they do start to lack in the speed department. And the reason why they were put at 8.7 is because they were struggling against things like the Hunter not the Hunter F6, the F100, and I suppose a little bit of the Hunter F6. They were also getting dragged up into 10.0, where they were facing the T2 at the time, which was pretty ridiculous. So Now that those are out of the way, I think we have a lot more room for these sort of 8.7s to flourish, like the proper 8.7s, the Venom, the non-BIS, the A5 Sabre, I guess even the F25 Sabre, the CL13A, the Mark IV, my mistake, the CL13 Mark IV, which is basically an A5 Sabre. I would definitely put all of those there, and I don't think that's unreasonable. It may be a little change, but all these sort of little adjustments really make a massive difference when you have a look at the tiers that I've sort of created here. Now, for me, tanks is much the same. For me, all these top tier areas need is just a little bit of decompression. At these specific areas, it really makes a massive difference, and it just makes a whole world of good for all of these areas. Not just top tier, but the areas that you use to grind to top tier. These are so important for player experience, and honestly, these little things just make so much of a difference. So I'd like to just quickly go on to tank battle ratings, and then we'll return to a general discussion. So for me, I would probably keep about 10.3 to about 9.3-ish, about the same. I would move them up 2 BR brackets together, and of course the relevant helicopters would go up as well. The places that I would decompress are around 8.3 and 7.0. Why these two battle ratings? Because, in my opinion, the jump from 5.7 to 6.7 is way too much. And the jump from 7.7 to 8.0 and then to 9.0 is way too much. So, if you can even that out just a little bit, you just make so much better of a battle rating system. Things like the Brennus and all the unstabilized French vehicles would remain at the same battle rating, and all the stabilized stuff would go up or stay where it is. For example, the STB-1 goes up. The Leopard 1 maybe might go up, maybe it'll stay where it is. BMPs will all go up. Things like the Bradley will go up. The Leopard 1A1 will go up. The Type 74s will go up. The MTCA and the OF40s, the Leopard 1A1 L44 will go up a little bit. All of these it'll just give top tier a breath of fresh air. And I think that's what a lot of people are really looking for. When they say top tier's fucked, top tier's gone, it's a lost cause, it's rubbish, don't bother with it, it's very experimental. It's always going to be a shitfest. But if you can add a little bit of decompression into that mix, you honestly get so much better an experience. And we experienced this with that old 1.85 meta. We experienced it. We had really good decompression. Every top jet was a whole battle rating away from the previous one. And I'd love to see that repeated. That, for me, those were the golden days. And I think that many people will agree. I think a lot of people struggle with the top tier grind because it doesn't have that that ease. It doesn't allow you to slip into it as easy as, say, 8.7 or even old top tier with the MiG-19 and the F-100. I think, personally, that if you manage to do a little bit of decompression, you will go a long way. Anyway, ladies and gents, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Take care, stay safe, wash your hands, you grub, and I'll catch you next time.